Greetings, Wambui Bahati here. Wambui made it. Today, I'm going to be working with this soft, luxurious velvet yarn. Yes, we're gonna loom knit some luxurious, classy velvet hats. Come on, let's get started. This is the luscious yarn. It is called Royal Velvet, go figure, and it is by Loops and Threads. It is 100% polyester. I am using a loom that has 41 pegs. I'm going to start by making the loop, which is what we do when we start all of our loom knitted hats. I'm going to make a loop, and I'm going to take the loop and put the loop on the anchor peg, or the peg that I sometimes affectionately like to call the lonely peg. Gonna tighten it just a little bit, and then we are going to get the working yarn and we're gonna start doing E-wraps. We're gonna do luscious and wonderful velvety E-wraps around each and every peg. Now, if you're watching this and you're not familiar with loom knitting, or you've never loom knitted before, I do have a video, and the link will be down in the description as well. And it is a video called Loom Knitting for Beginners. And I take it very slow. I teach you what you need to know in order to be loom knitting in no time. For those of you who just like to start projects with me or who need a refresher, I am going to be doing the E-wrap loom knit stitch. That is the only stitch I'm going to be doing for this hat. The reason why we don't have to worry about our hat rolling up is because I'm going to make a brim for the hat. I'm going to make a brim that's about maybe 2 inches or so, and so I'm going to be loom knitting until I get about 5 inches or so before I fold it back over to make the brim. So I'm just going to be doing the E-wrap, and as you know, when we do the E-wrap all around, once we have 2 loops on every peg, we're just going to take our pick and pull that bottom loop up and over and off the peg. And so we're going to do that all around. And so for those of you who pretty much know what to do, if you want to skip ahead, I have put chapters down in the description box, so that if you want to go ahead and just meet us when we get to where we're folding over the brim, I have told you exactly where that marker is, and you can do that. So we're just going to go around and lift up all the bottom rows over the top. I'm not going to do the whole 5 inches here, but I am going to do a couple of rows for those people that, like I said, like doing a project or just like seeing how it begins, and also for those people who may need a little refresher on how to do the hat. That's what we're doing here. And so we're just going to be pulling the bottom over the top until we get back to the place where we started. And then we're going to do the E-wrap on every peg all around again. And so that's what we're doing. Again, I do want to say that if you are new to loom knitting, or if you are watching this and you're not sure exactly what is going on or what you should be doing, I do have a video called Loom Knitting for Beginners, and it will get you started and up and loom knitting, and you will know exactly what to do and exactly what you're doing. Okay, so we are just right now taking the bottom loop and pulling it up and over. I do enjoy working with this velvet. The velvet has a great feel to it, and so far it's so easy to work with. So I'm going to be pulling the bottom up over the top And one of the things that I'm doing, and I'm very careful to do with this velvety yarn, is instead of just pulling the bottom loop straight up, and I'm pulling it out a little bit. So I'm pulling the bottom out and up and over. So I'm pulling it out a little bit to clear all that fuzziness of the velvet. But the velvet has a good feel to it, and I'm really excited to see the hat. And so we're just going to be doing this. Again, if you want to skip ahead, I do have chapters down below. And so I'm going to leave the tail there for a little while. And what I'm doing now is I'm just going around and I'm pushing all the loops down so that I can make room for the new row of E-wraps that I'm going to do. So I'm just pushing every single loop down, down, down. And that way I'll know that I have lots of room for my new E-wraps. Okay, and so now I'm taking my working yarn and I'm just going to repeat what we did before. And so I'm just going to go all around with the E-wraps. I have a little knot in my thread, but I think it's going to be okay. And now we are back to our last peg. We're going to take the bottom loop up over that top loop to secure that so we can, and I think we're going to do a whole nother row before I'm going to take off that tail from the anchor peg. I'm going to just go around one more time, make 2 rows of knits before I take the tail off the peg. And so I just can't get over the feel. I really like the feel of this velvety yarn. I've seen 2 types of velvet. I've seen this velvet that has what I call more of a long shag to it, and then I've seen the velvets that are the fibers are closer in. It's not so shaggy. We have completed our second row, so I'm going to go ahead and take this tail off the anchor peg. I'm going to pull out the loop and I'm going to push it underneath the bottom and push it back through inside the loom so that it is out of the way. I'm going to push everything down again to make room for the next row of E-wraps. And I'm going to take our luscious velvet and I'm going to start E-wrapping. Now I'm going to make this, we're going to have a brim. It's going to be about 5 inches. So I'm going to come back when I have a little bit more done and we'll see where we are. Okay, looks good. I think I want it to be a little wider, just a little bit wider. So I'm gonna make a few, at least one or two more rows so that it's a little wider. Okay, this is the last row of my brim. I'm pretty sure I have it the length that I want it to be. And so we're going to start the fold over. And so I'm going to push everything down, because now instead of a row of E-wraps going on top of the bottom loops, we're going to actually pull the inside up and over, and we're going to pull the inside over on top of the loops. So I'm pushing everything down, and okay, so we've got the edge of the hat, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where the first peg is, and I'm just going to kind of run my finger from that first peg straight up, because what I want to get is I want to get the loop that is there on that outer edge, the very outer edge, the loop. And I want to bring that loop down and put it on top of that peg. All right, so I'm gonna do that one more time. What I'm doing is I am going to, once I'm ready to do my brim, I'm gonna find that first peg, go up, catch that outer loop that is pretty much over, in line with that peg. Pretty much in line with that peg, and we're gonna put it on top of that peg. And then I'm gonna go right beside it. I need to find the loops for all of these pegs. There should be a loop for every peg. So I'm using my hands to kind of feel where the next loop is, and I'm gonna find that loop, and I'm gonna put it on the next peg. I'm gonna feel for the next loop. I'm gonna just get the next loop that's on the edge. We don't wanna take any loops that are not on the very edge. So we're gonna just go around that edge, finding the next loop and putting it on the peg that goes with that, the next loop on the next peg, and feeling and finding that loop. With this velvet, it's hard to see the openings because of the fuzziness, so you really kind of got to just get a feel for where that next loop is, and you should always be right on the edge. And now there should be a loop for every peg. Okay, sometimes I feel like I may have lost the peg. Let me see, where is the peg? I know there's a loop for every peg, but I'm not seeing, oh my goodness, I hope I didn't skip a peg. Okay, wait, here's the loop. Okay, we got the loop, okay. Whew. All right, every peg has a loop. Okay, and I think it looks beautiful. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom loop and pull it up over the top loop of our brim. So we're just going to go around, and again, it's kind of, I'm pulling it out and up and over, because it kind of clears that fuzziness of the velvet. So I'm pulling out, up, and over. And usually after you've just folded over your brim, pulling the brim bottom loop up over the top loop of the brim is sometimes a little tighter than normally, tighter than it had been. And it's also when you're doing the next row, the first row after your brim is even a little tighter. So you can keep that in mind and understand that it's not you, it just gets tight when you're closing the brim and that first row after you've done the brim. So now I'm pushing everything down because now that we've done that, we look at the brim. Doesn't it look pretty? I think it looks nice. It feels so nice. Okay, so now that we've done that, we are going to continue our hat. So we're going to take our working yarn and we're going to start with the wrap, the wrap, the E-wrap, the E-wrap, and we're just going to wrap. Do like we were doing before. And I tell you, this is the only thing we're going to do now. We're just going to keep doing the E-wrap. And then when we have 2 loops on a peg, we're going to go like we're doing now and pull the bottom up and over the top. And this is what we're going to do. This is the only thing we're going to do until now we have our hat the height that we want our hat to be. So we're just going to pull up and over. We're just going to repeat what we've done before. Again, if those people that want to speed ahead, I do have chapters, I do have markers in the description. So the next place where we would be doing something different is going to be when I have my hat the height that I want it to be. And then we're going to get it ready for cast off. So I'm not going to do too many of these, just a few. And then I just love that. I love how it looks. Looks so rich. Again, we're pushing down. And the E-wrap. Okay, so when I have my hat at the height that I want it, then I'll be back. I'm back. Okay, so I wanted my hat to be a little taller, but I don't think I got enough yarn. I got one skein and I'm afraid I'm gonna run out. So I'm gonna go ahead and cast off now, even though the hat is not as tall as I wanted it to be. So for the cast off, I need enough yarn to do at least 2 revolutions around the outside of the loom in order to ensure I have enough yarn to work with for the cast off. And so this is all the yarn that I have, so I think it's time for me to cast off. So I'm going to take the yarn and I'm going to thread it through the yarn needle. And this, I'm noticing that this, okay, I'm going to cut that off, but it seems like the yarn just does come apart kind of easily. So I feel like I'm going to have to be really careful, but I'm going to thread it into the yarn needle and I'm going to get ready for the cast off. Okay, so in casting off, I'm going to get my yarn out of the way. In casting off, we're going to go to the peg that is just to the left of the working yarn. There's the working yarn, there's the peg to the left of it. You're going to take the needle and go down into the groove, pull that loop up and totally off, and then you're going to pull the yarn through. And something is not happening the way it should. Oh, it seems like the velvet is getting stuck on itself. It's some kind of friction. Let's see what happens when I do this one. Okay, so I'm going to go down, pull this loop off, and I'm pulling the yarn through the loop. We're going to get this one, take it off, and pull, go and get this yarn. And wait. I was pulling through and my yarn just started kind of falling apart on me. Okay, I'm gonna have to work very delicately because this yarn does not like, the velvet doesn't pull, it doesn't like going through the velvet loops. It's like when I pull the yarn, the velvet through itself, it gets stuck. It gets stuck and it wants to fall apart. Oh my goodness, the yarn doesn't, look at it. Look, it's just that one little string holding all of that together. Okay, I don't want to lose this hat. So I'm going to be very careful and see if I can finish this hat. Oh, the yarn, when it rubs against itself. Okay, this is not working very good. Ooh. Okay, it's stuck. Okay. Wow, look, it's just falling apart. And it's hard to pull through there. And it's shedding. Ooh, this is not a good thing. All right, so I'm gonna work very carefully and see if I can save this hat. And I think I already have an idea of what I need to do in the future when I'm doing a velvet hat. But right now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cast this off as best I can with the velvet yarn. And it doesn't want to pull through. The velvet yarn is getting stuck. It doesn't glide past itself. It gets stuck. Look at it, it's stuck. It doesn't want to come through. Okay. All right, so one thing I see is that the yarn should not be doubled. So when I'm using the yarn, I'm going to use just an inch or two on the end. I'm not going to have it doubled like that. That's for sure. Okay, so I just want to, an inch or so, and I'm going to try to gather up as many loops at one time so that when I pull the yarn through, I'm not continuously pulling it through loops. I'm going to gather as many loops as I can, and then as many as I can, and then I'm going to pull the yarn through all at once like that, and that's a little better. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to keep a very short tail on it so that the yarn is not doubled, and I'm going to get as many loops at one time. Okay, and now, all right, so now we're through with the loom, and I'm gonna pull the velvet through the loops, but it's kind of stuck. It doesn't flow. That's what it is. It doesn't flow. It's I went ahead and loom knitted another hat just like the previous hat, only I'm using red velvet yarn this time, and I'm also using, I have a red or a color that's very close to the red velvet, which is a regular knitting yarn. And so the velvet yarn is the exact same yarn that we were using before. This is Royal Velvet, just in red. It is that same polyester. But in addition, I'm also using a Lion brand Wool Ease Thick and Quick yarn, which is acrylic. Now, your yarn doesn't have to be wool ease or a yarn from Lion Brand, but whatever you would normally use to knit your hat, acrylic or wool, then we're going to take this new yarn that is close to the color and is close to the weight. You're going to take that yarn, you're going to take the working yarn from the velvet and cut it, and we're going to be done now that we have our hat as tall as we want it and we're ready to cast off. We are going to cut that velvet. We're going to measure about 10 inches and cut that velvet working yarn, and we're going to replace the velvet working yarn with the regular loom knitting yarn. Or look at our yarn is still coming, the velvet is falling apart. So we're going to take the yarn, the wool yarn or the acrylic yarn, and we're going to tie it to attach it to the velvet yarn as close to the peg and as close to the beginning of where that yarn is, as tight and as close to the loom as we can, because now we have a new working yarn, and it is the regular loom knitting yarn, the acrylic or wool or whatever your regular loom knitting yarn is. We're going to do the 2 revolutions. We're going to cut the thread, and we are now going to thread that yarn, the new working yarn, which is our regular loom knitting yarn. We're going to thread our needle with that. This is the yarn that we're going to use to do the cast off. Okay, so we're going to take our needle. Once it's threaded, we're going to go to the left of the working yarn, and we're going to go into that groove and pull up that loop, and we're going to pull that new working yarn through. Now, I'm having issues because my thread is tangled. I don't think it has anything to do with the velvet like we were having before. I'm just having, my yarn is just a wreck right here. Okay, so we're gonna go to, okay, get that through there. Okay, now we're gonna go to the second loop and pull it up and over, pull it off that peg and pull that yarn through. Again, it's my yarn. My yarn is just, my yarn is just really a mess. Okay, so now I think we've got the tangles out, because I really do believe that the regular yarn is not going to fight against the velvet, and that is going to flow, and our velvet is not going to fall apart because of the friction caused when we pull one velvet close to the other velvet yarn. And so I believe this is the answer. I believe the answer is to get a regular yarn to do the cast off when we're doing a velvet yarn like this, because I really like the velvet yarn. The velvet yarn, it feels good, and it was really easy to work with up until we started doing the cast off. It has a great feel, feels good, and it was really easy to work with until we started doing the cast off, and that yarn did not want to flow through the loops of the other velvet yarn. But now it's working. I can feel the difference. It feels like when I do other hats that are not velvet, it feels good. And so I'm just going to go ahead and finish doing the cast off with this regular loom knitting yarn. Okay, let's see what we have. All right, already I can feel a difference in how the yarn is pulling. It is flowing. It is not getting stuck. I don't feel any resistance. Plus, I don't see my hat shedding like my hat was shedding before. Okay, so it pulls very easily. It closed right up. There was no resistance. It just flowed right through there. So that is the answer, is when working with this velvety yarn, when you're doing a cast off, use regular yarn to do the cast off. Okay, I'm going to turn it inside out, and I'm going to try to stitch it closed. It did close really easily, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll stitch it. However, the velvet is very dense and makes it for a very thick hat, and so getting through, finding the spaces to stitch it up are a little more difficult because it's so dense. But we're going to go ahead and stitch this up and do what we need to tie it off. And hide the yarn as much as we can, even though we're working on the inside. All right, so here we have our tail yarn from the anchor peg, and I'm just gonna thread the needle, and it's pretty tight. There's nothing, I don't need to tighten it. I'm just gonna hide it. So I'm gonna hide it by putting it inside, in between the layers of the brim, and I'm just gonna pull it out one side, pull it a little tight so that when I cut it off, it's gonna slip back in and we won't see it anymore. So the tail is now gone. And so that is our hat. These are our wonderful royal velvet hats. I hope you enjoy your luxurious velvet hat. I hope that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you find yourself saying, "Pardon me, but your class is showing." Questions? Please ask.